Hello, I'm Mike Huckabee, U.S. Ambassador to Israel. This past weekend, Dr. Hanan Balki, who is the regional coordinator for the WHO for the Eastern Mediterranean region, called upon me to put more pressure on Israel to bring humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. I appreciate the message from Dr. Balki, and today what I would like to suggest is that we work together on putting the pressure where it really belongs, on Hamas, to give us the opportunity to open up those humanitarian channels. So we call upon Hamas to sign an agreement so that humanitarian aid can flow into Gaza to the people who desperately need it. When that happens and hostages are released, which is an urgent matter for all of us, then we hope that that humanitarian aid will flow and flow freely, knowing that it will be done without Hamas being able to confiscate and abuse their own people by not allowing those resources to get to the people who desperately need it.
I think reprehensible is a good word. I was going to say disgusting.
That's funny. I was going to say disgusting also. And I've known Mike. I've known him. I worked with him for 10 years.
It is hard to believe. But so what is Huckabee saying? If Hamas doesn't cave, and almost everybody agrees that Hamas is not going to cave, he's willing to starve to death hundreds of thousands of people. That's what he's saying.
Yes.
This is a good Christian. This is a guy who gives Christianity a bad name.
Yeah.
52 days now have gone by where no aid has come into Gaza. 52 days. People are starving. They're going to start dying in significant numbers. What is Trump doing? Nothing. Hardly anybody is saying anything. And then you have people like Huckabee who are basically justifying what the Israelis are doing. Just truly remarkable. He's in a total mess. It's very hard to say what's going to happen inside of Israel. I've noticed there is a significant uptick recently in talk about civil war. Going back to the period before October 7th, in early 2023, there was a lot of talk about civil war in Israel, and it's died down somewhat since October 7th, but it's began to tick up again. And this tells you that the centrifugal forces at play in Israel run the real risk of tearing that country apart. Second point I'd make to you, just about Trump. Yeah, I think he is sick and tired of Netanyahu, and he'd probably like to see the genocide end. The problem that Trump faces is that on the Iran issue, he's probably going to have to go against Bibi. He's going to have to confront the Israelis, and he's going to probably push through an improved JCPOA, which will drive Netanyahu crazy.
Right.
And drive the Israel lobby crazy. And the question you have to ask yourself is, can he afford to have a fight over Gaza and over Hamas at the same time he's having a fight over Iran? And I think the answer is no. And I think one of the reasons that he's not putting any pressure on Netanyahu over the genocide is in large part because he's steeling himself for the fight that he's going to have to wage with Netanyahu and with the Israelis and with the Israel lobby over the deal that looks like it's going to reach fruition regarding Iran's nuclear program.
Takeaway. This discussion delivers a scathing critique of U.S. and Israeli policies in Gaza, highlighting the moral and geopolitical failures surrounding the 52-day aid blockade and starvation tactics. U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee's justification of withholding aid by blaming Hamas is labeled reprehensible and disgusting, exposing hypocrisy in U.S. rhetoric. Mearsheimer suggests Trump's silence on Gaza stems from strategic restraint to preserve leverage for an impending Iran nuclear deal, while Israel's internal divisions signal potential instability. This discussion underscores the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, the complicity of U.S. policy, and the fragility of Israel's political landscape. Analysis. Context and setup. The discussion transitions from a conversation about U.S. Secretary of Defense Hegseth to the Middle East, specifically Gaza and U.S.-Israel relations. Judge Napolitano introduces a clip of Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, responding to a World Health Organization, WHO, officials' plea for humanitarian aid to Gaza. The discussion is emotionally charged, blending primary source material, Huckabee's statement, sharp commentary from Mearsheimer and Napolitano, and references to recent Israeli political developments. It covers approximately 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Huckabee's statement and immediate reaction. Napolitano plays a clip of Huckabee addressing Dr. Hanan Balkhi, the WHO regional coordinator, who urged more pressure on Israel to allow aid into Gaza. Huckabee deflects responsibility, stating, "We work together on putting the pressure where it really belongs on Hamas to give us the opportunity to open up those humanitarian channels." He conditions aid on Hamas signing an agreement and releasing hostages, claiming this would prevent Hamas from confiscating resources. Both Napolitano and Mearsheimer react viscerally. Napolitano calls Huckabee's stance an attempted justification for using starvation as a war technique by someone claiming to be a Christian pastor, labeling it reprehensible. Mearsheimer agrees, initially intending to call it disgusting, but endorsing reprehensible as apartment. He argues Huckabee's position implies a willingness to starve to death hundreds of thousands of people if Hamas doesn't capitulate, which is unlikely. This exchange sets the tone, framing U.S. policy as morally bankrupt and complicit in Gaza's suffering. Critique of Huckabee's moral and logical flaws. Mearsheimer and Napolitano's critique hinges on 2 points. Moral hypocrisy. Huckabee, a self-proclaimed Christian pastor, is accused of giving Christianity a bad name by endorsing policies that lead to mass suffering. This resonates with audiences sensitive to the disconnect between religious rhetoric and actions, especially in the context of Gaza's humanitarian crisis. Logical fallacy. Huckabee's argument shifts blame to Hamas, ignoring Israel's documented actions, executing aid workers and blocking food, medicine, and water for 52 days. Mearsheimer notes that almost everybody agrees Hamas won't cave, making Huckabee's condition for aid unrealistic and a pretext for inaction. This critique is powerful because it combines emotional outrage with factual grounding, referencing the 52-day blockade and its consequences, e.g., people are starving, they're going to start dying in significant numbers. The discussion implicitly calls out the broader Western narrative that often frames Hamas as the sole obstacle to peace, ignoring Israel's role. Trump's silence and strategic calculations. Napolitano questions whether there is daylight between Huckabee and Trump, asserting that Trump must know about Israel's actions and the blockade. Mearsheimer agrees, stating Trump is doing nothing and that hardly anybody is saying anything about the crisis. This highlights a perceived failure of U.S. leadership to address a humanitarian disaster. Mearsheimer offers a geopolitical explanation for Trump's silence. He suggests Trump is sick and tired of Netanyahu and would like the Gaza genocide to end but avoids pressuring Israel due to an impending fight over Iran's nuclear program. Trump is likely preparing to push an improved Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, which would anger Netanyahu and the Israel lobby. To conserve political capital, Trump refrains from challenging Israel on Gaza, as fighting on both fronts, Gaza and Iran, would be untenable. This analysis reveals the complex interplay of U.S. domestic politics, foreign policy priorities, and Israel's influence, providing a nuanced perspective on Trump's inaction. Israel's internal political turmoil. The discussion also addresses Israel's domestic instability, drawing on recent statements from Israeli figures. Avigdor Lieberman, a former defense minister and Knesset member, Lieberman posted on X that American sources indicate Trump is sick and tired of Netanyahu. This suggests U.S.-Israel tensions at the leadership level. Yair Lapid, the opposition leader, warned of Jews killing Jews soon, pointing to rising civil war fears. Mearsheimer notes a significant uptick in such rhetoric, recalling similar concerns in early 2023 before October 7. PLO president, described as an Israeli stooge, he called for Hamas to disarm, further complicating Palestinian dynamics. Mearsheimer concludes that Israel is in a total mess, with centrifugal forces risking tearing the country apart. This analysis connects Gaza's external crisis to Israel's internal fragility, painting a picture of a nation on the brink of both moral and political collapse. Broader implications. The discussion raises critical questions about U.S. complicity. By aligning with Israel's blockade and failing to act, the U.S. risks being seen as complicit in a humanitarian disaster, undermining its moral credibility. Israel's stability. Internal divisions and the Gaza conflict could exacerbate Israel's political and social fractures, potentially leading to violence or governance crises. Geopolitical strategy. Trump's prioritization of an Iran deal over Gaza reflects a pragmatic but morally questionable approach, highlighting the limits of U.S. influence over Israel. The discussion's strength lies in its ability to weave together a specific event, Huckabee's statement, a humanitarian crisis, Gaza's blockade, and broader geopolitical dynamics, Israel-Iran relations, all while maintaining a sharp moral critique. Summary. The discussion examines the Gaza humanitarian crisis, focusing on U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee's controversial claim that Hamas must bear responsibility for blockade, which Mearsheimer and Napolitano denounce as reprehensible and disgusting for justifying starvation. They criticize Trump's silence, with Mearsheimer suggesting it stems from strategic restraint to avoid clashing with Israel while preparing for an Iran nuclear deal. The discussion also highlights Israel's internal turmoil, citing Lieberman's claim of Trump's frustration with Netanyahu, Lapid's civil war warning, and the PLO president's call for Hamas to disarm. It portrays a dire situation in Gaza, U.S. policy failures, and Israel's precarious political state. Conclusion. The discussion is a compelling and morally charged critique of U.S. and Israeli policies in Gaza, exposing the hypocrisy of figures like Huckabee and the strategic calculations behind Trump's inaction. By combining emotional outrage with geopolitical analysis, it underscores the human cost of the 52-day aid blockade and the broader implications for U.S. credibility and Israel's stability. Mearsheimer's insights into Trump's Iran strategy and Israel's internal divisions add depth, making this discussion a powerful commentary on the intersection of humanitarian crises and global politics. It serves as a call to question the moral and strategic priorities of Western leaders in the face of Gaza's suffering and Israel's unraveling cohesion.